Hello and welcome to PFF Wire. I'm Doug Kyed, joined as always by Brad Spielberger. Brad, how are you doing on this Monday afternoon?
It's the PFF Wire Bowl tonight, as we talked about. We got your Patriots versus my Chicago Bears. So how do you think I'm doing, Doug? How do you think I'm feeling heading into tonight's matchup?
Yes, the team that I covered for 8-9 years versus your hometown Chicago Bears. Don't think you're feeling very confident in this one. The fact that the Bears are underdog, 8-point underdogs, and no one knows who's starting at quarterback for the Patriots tonight, possibly even members of the team. We'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, that's not a great sign. Let's kick things off with the biggest news of the day. And that, of course, is the fact that the Indianapolis Colts have benched quarterback Matt Ryan. Considering how Matt Ryan has played this season overall, not the biggest surprise. I believe that he's somewhere around PFF's 30th ranked quarterback in overall grade so far this season. It's going to be Sam Ehlinger starting at quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. He was a 6th-round pick just last year. He actually just went over Nick Foles on the depth chart to be Matt Ryan's backup about 8 days ago. Now he's starting. It's kind of some confusing news for how this was all announced. First of all, it was reported that Matt Ryan is going to be benched. Then it came out that Matt Ryan has a grade 2 shoulder separation, that he won't practice or be active this week. And then Frank Reich just straight up said that Sam Ehlinger is going to be the starter for the rest of the season. So it's Sam Ehlinger time in Indianapolis. The timing on this is very interesting. And it's even interesting to know, or to try to decipher, who actually made this decision for the Colts.
Yeah, I think it's certainly fair to wonder if owner Jim Irsay stepped in here and made this call. I do think it suggests that both head coach Frank Reich and GM Chris Ballard may be on something of a hot seat. They've had this quarterback carousel, of course. Matt Ryan, as you mentioned, he's only graded better so far this season than Justin Fields, Cooper Rush, Joe Flacco, and Baker Mayfield. Not a great group to be above when no one else is in that list. And then also he's attempted 5 passes, 30-plus yards downfield. He just doesn't really seem to have the ability to move the ball down the field. At the same time, their left tackle gave the most pressures of any offensive lineman this week, which has been a consistent theme. And guard Matt Pryor, who's kind of moved around the offensive line, was 3rd in pressures allowed this week. So there are a lot of issues here. It's not just Matt Ryan, but I think when you take away the deep downfield passing, Wentz makes his mistakes. He turns the ball over. He fumbles, all those things. He at least does give you some explosive plays. And so I think that's what Sam Ehlinger, he brings a little bit of that from Texas, and also he uses legs. I mean, he's going to run the football a lot. It'll be a different dynamic. Any team that's played Indianapolis now is preparing for a completely different offense with Sam Ehlinger, and maybe that alone is kind of the spark they're looking for going forward.
All right, first off, is it Ehlinger or is it Ehlinger? Because I've heard it both ways.
So I only said Ehlinger because Trevor and Mike on the draft show, or on the It's Just Football, great show. Everyone go check it out. Yep. They said Ehlinger, and they're draft analysts, so I trust them. I'm going to go with the G instead of the J.
All right, we're going with Ehlinger or Ehlinger. If someone wants to hop in the comments and correct us or tell us decidedly whether or not it's Ehlinger or not, go ahead. But I mean, the AFC South is still wide open at this point. The Colts are 3-3-1. Tennessee Titans have actually strung together 4 straight wins now. So they're kind of sitting pretty right now. But my biggest question on this is, I do think that it's worth seeing what Sam Ehlinger can do, especially if Matt Ryan's dealing with an injury. And I know that they say that they want to go with Sam Ehlinger for the rest of the season, but who knows how things go here over the next few weeks. Why hasn't there been more of a consideration made to make another move on the offensive line with Eric Fisher still sitting out there? I mean, you're down to the point where you've got Dennis Kelly starting at left tackle. It's not going great. I wouldn't say that there's this dramatic hope for the future there either, since he's been in the league for so long. It's not like you're expecting him to somehow just ascend into being that type of left tackle that you want.
That's what I was referencing. He made, I think, his first start at left tackle for them. They signed him this past offseason, or I guess more recently, probably from the Tennessee Titans, who they played in this game. And the Titans do not have a good edge rush group, really, at all. I mean, he made Bud Dupree look really, really good, which hasn't been the case for a while. So, yeah, I mean, they kind of hung him out to dry. Frank Reich did say that in his press conference. He said, we promised that we would have a good running game and a better offensive line than he had in Atlanta. Atlanta's offensive line isn't great pass protecting, but they have a better run game than the Indianapolis Colts, no question about it. They are definitely creating more yards before contact and doing a lot to help Marcus Mariota. Granted, he's throwing the ball about 10 times a game, so you can pass protect when you're dropping back 10 times. But yeah, they did not surround Matt Ryan with really enough help at all. They acknowledge that, they admit it. And I think Ehlinger's mobility, and ability to evade rushers is probably half of the thinking here, if not more so.
Yeah, definitely. I just to speak to that AFC South and even how fast things change within the NFL. I actually reached out to someone from the Jaguars after this news came out saying, like, what do you think of this Matt Ryan bench? And he said, all I can remember is him completing 42 passes against us last week. And I mean, Matt Ryan completed 42 passes. He had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Bless you, Brad. Let's keep up with our fresh off the wire segment off the top here. Let's go through some injuries before we get into tonight's game. Just the quarterback situation there for the Patriots. Seahawks got some good news on DK Metcalf. At least that's how it's looking at this point. I think it was Dwayne McFarland who mentioned that Pete Carroll always seems extremely optimistic about injuries. He always paints this great picture of everything. It was even Chris Carson last year before he retired. He kept expecting him to come back. So it seems good at this point for DK Metcalf. Was not great in the moment when DK Metcalf was carted off the sideline into the locker room and basically immediately ruled out.
Yeah, no, it looked bad. I know a lot of people kind of making the jokes because obviously he was carted off in a prior game and it was a whole separate issue that had nothing to do with, his bodily health. But yeah, hopefully good news there. Sounds like no surgery. I'm sure he still will miss a little bit of time. And a similar vein, Mike Williams, the Los Angeles Chargers, kind of just broke before we joined. He has that dreaded high ankle sprain. Sounds like no surgery, but again, that can be a 6 to 8 week injury depending on the severity. It varies. Trent Williams played for the 49ers yesterday, and he had that high ankle sprain. I want to say only missed 3 games. So It does vary player to player, but Mike Williams, his entire game is based off explosiveness, on, jumping 10 feet in the air downfield, doing all those things. That is, I'm sure very, very difficult cutting and all that without with a high ankle sprain injury. He could be out for a while. It's a well-timed bye week for them, but not a good injury for them. What else is new for the Chargers?
Yeah, those high ankle sprains are definitely worse for skill position players than I'd say for offensive linemen. There's also different grades of high ankle sprains as well, but I'd say that I'm not shocked that Trent Williams can come back from that injury faster than a quarterback, a running back, a wide receiver, who else it might be. Jets got some unfortunate injury news. Rookie running back Breece Hall, who was really standing out over the last few weeks, out with a knee injury, out for the season with a knee injury, and also offensive lineman Elijah Vera Tucker, their first-round pick last year, who's played right guard, right tackle, left tackle. He is also out for the season. So the Jets are off to a hot start, but these are 2 pretty bad injuries to suffer here.
Tucker injury is just the latest in a barrage of injuries for this Jets offensive line, and it's just you start to wonder if they can overcome it. They did win that game, frankly, in spite of Zach Wilson, and when you watch him under pressure, he had another one of kind of his highlight plays where he ran like a chicken with his head cut off in that game and somehow got rid of the ball, but he just cannot really produce much when pressured. And often leads to, these bad sacks where he's losing 10, 15 yards. Vera Tucker, you tweeted earlier, he's played left guard, left tackle, right tackle, everywhere but center. And he's been pretty good at all those spots. It's just hard to continue to overcome all of these injuries. Breece Hall has been their outlet and their kind of, safety valve on a lot of checkdowns, which he's turned into, long gains and touchdowns. So 2 massive injuries, unfortunate injuries for, back-to-back top 50 picks for the Jets. Just, hard to envision them staying on this 5-2 pace as they keep losing key offensive playmakers.
A few other injuries on defense to get to. Jordan Lewis of the Dallas Cowboys got injured on an interception. He is out for the season with a foot injury. J.C. Jackson, I believe, expected to be out for the season with a dislocated kneecap. As far as skill position players go, Amon-Ra St. Brown, the Lions announced that their wide receiver did not suffer a concussion in Week 7. He was kind of stumbling after he suffered a head injury, and that forced them to take him out of the game. I think that, that it's a good situation for player safety to take players out of the game when they do show those signs of ataxia. But I would also imagine that it's frustrating for players to be told you didn't suffer a concussion, but you have to be out for the rest of the game. I would also say that a concussion is something that's hard to diagnose. So they can say they didn't suffer a concussion, and I believe them. I believe the Lions that Amon-Ra St. Brown didn't suffer a concussion, but it's not like you're, doing an x-ray and saying like this bone is broken or this bone is not broken. It's not really all that clear cut.
We've seen several instances in the past where that was the, said, and then a couple days later he said, actually, he told us now he's got a headache and he's not feeling well, and things have progressed in a negative direction. And then it turns out the player did have either some concussive contact or, some issue with that brain. So, yeah, I think it is still a benefit long term. I certainly understand the frustration. The Lions weren't winning that game if they had 5 Amon-Ra St. Browns. So, I don't think it really impacted the outcome. And also he was, not 100% healthy still, coming off their bye week, coming into that matchup. You now maybe get him back even more close to 100% healthy, avoiding some hits and not playing for the majority of that game against a ferocious Dallas defense. Maybe he can, now be even better going into week 8.
A couple tight end injuries. Daniel Bellinger, who's been a great rookie tight end for the New York Giants. This is Jordan Renan of ESPN reported that he suffered a fracture around the eye socket and septum. He might require surgery. He was bleeding. His eye was swollen. That was just a brutal situation. Like I said, he's been a player who's, contributed in the passing game, contributed as a blocker. So that's a tough break for the Giants. I'll have to figure out what they want to do at tight end there. And then David Njoku of the Browns also suffered an injury. I believe he's day-to-day, correct?
Oh, there were different reports. I believe it's actually week to week. I did see that one, Mary Kay Cabot, who is, one of the better Browns reporters, said day-to-day. I believe she may have had a typo there because I saw most tweets I saw said week to week. So, he left the game in a walking boot and on crutches. So certainly not a great situation there. And credit to the Cleveland Browns. He has been phenomenal this year.
Yeah.
They were the only team that even came close to negotiate an extension of those franchise tag guys, Mike Gesicki, Dalton Schultz, and him. And he has played, as the best of those 3 guys, been very productive on a consistent week-to-week basis, made a lot of big plays in this game against Baltimore. And, they almost pulled the game out, obviously, without him. But it's a big loss for them. Another tough, 1-score loss for Cleveland. Their season kind of slipping away. And him not being in the lineup is a big loss for them on offense.
It definitely is. And then just an update on Daniel Bellinger. Brian Dibble said that he does require surgery. Still a possibility that he could come back this season. All right. It is 4:14 p.m. on Monday. The Patriots play the Chicago Bears in 4 hours. And I'd say that almost anything is on the table at this point for what the Patriots are going to do at quarterback. There have been a few reports out there that Mac Jones is expected to play. That is also the latest that I'm hearing, that he is expected to at least be active in this game. I don't think that he is still 100% on that high ankle sprain, just based on what I'm hearing. I reported earlier in the week, it was somewhere around 85 to 90%. Now that might be up to 90%, maybe higher than that. But, it's a 6-week injury. It's been 4 weeks. You wouldn't expect him to be 100% at this time. Beyond me saying, expect him to be active in this game, almost anything else is on the table. Like, yeah, I'd say that, if he's active, probably a good possibility that he starts in this game. But like I said, anything could be on the table. You could see a split share at quarterback. You could see Bailey Zappi starting at quarterback. I mean, I think that Mac Jones starts, but nothing has been really set in concrete at this point. And that is also a lot of the reports out there that, yep, he's expected to play, but we'll just kind of have to find out what the Patriots want to do in this situation. Mac Jones is going to be the starter moving forward. That's what I've heard, is that he's still considered the starter. But, if there is this weird possibility where he's active but doesn't start, from an optics issue around the league, for the fan base, everything, it's going to look pretty strange. I'll repeat again, expect him to be active. If he's active, I think he'll probably start, but nothing has been set in stone at this point.
Given how much they look alike, I think you could put Bailey Zappi in Mac Jones's jersey or vice versa and maybe pull a fast one on everyone. No, but all jokes aside, I think if you're these quarterbacks, you're probably dying to play in this matchup. I mean, the Chicago Bears are dead last in pressure percentage on opposing quarterbacks. They've been okay in the secondary. They're young guys, and Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker have come along recently, but certainly a defense you can exploit. You can run the ball on them. They're bottom 5 right now in EPA, or bottom 10, in EPA per rush allowed. So I think the return of Damian Harris on top of Ramondre Stevenson really playing kind of like that guy we expected him to once he took over the top job. They will also be able to move the ball on a consistent basis. So I'm sure, with Mac Jones, even if he's not 100%, probably pad his stats, but to get a game against a bad defense, maybe show that he can play well, regain some trust and confidence, not only in the locker room, but from the crazy Boston sports fans and media. It's a good opportunity in a primetime setting to do all of those things and get a lot of positive, reaction based on his play. And I think that is, if he does play, I think he will play well.
Yeah, I agree. And, there's been some speculation, at least on Boston sports radio and everything, is that like, all right, do we get him in the game against the Bears and see how he looks before the game against the Jets? Or do you rest him because it's then going to be a short week between the Bears game and the Jets week, and then you're at week 5 rather than week 4 for this injury? I think that's a lot of the things that the Patriots are probably considering right now is, do we put him out there before he's 100%? Do we give him a full share of snaps before he's 100%? What do we do in this situation? Because he's been pushing to start. He wants to start. He wants to play. And I'm sure that some of that is related to how well the offense is doing with Bailey Zappi in there as well. So, like I said, definitely an interesting situation. Still 4 hours before they actually have to make that decision. We'll find out soon if Garrett Gilbert is going to be elevated from the practice squad. That will definitely be a tell whether or not Mac Jones is going to be active in this game. It's already been reported by Tom Pelissero that Jamie Collins will be one of the practice squad elevations for this game. Kendrick Bourne, the Patriots wide receiver, I've been told will not play because of that turf toe injury. Nelson Aguilar missed practice on Thursday with a hamstring injury. He didn't play last week. He's been limited in practice, so certainly a possibility that he won't be on the field as well. So then you're talking about, okay, do they have to bring up another wide receiver from the practice squad as well? Because then they'd only have Jacoby Myers, Devontae Parker, the rookie Tyquan Thornton. There's another guy, Lil Jordan Humphreys on the practice squad. Perhaps they could elevate him. And if he's elevated, then Garrett Gilbert couldn't be activated. So we'll talk a little bit more about Monday Night Football after we give we take a quick break for one of our sponsors. PFF Wire is sponsored by Western and Southern Financial Group. While you focus on your roster moves, Western and Southern helps advance your money moves. Buying your first home, planning to start a family, wondering how to make your money grow, Western and Southern's playbook of life insurance, investment, and retirement solutions helps you rest assured on game day. Team up to understand needs and address goals with a game plan built just for you. Get started at westernsouthern.com/PFF. We will get to our best bets for Monday Night Football in a minute here, but let's first give our one up, one down from Sunday's slate of games. I'll start off here with my one up. I almost went with Seahawks safety. Actually, I'll get to that in a second. My one up is Carolina Panthers quarterback PJ Walker. There have been 2 quarterbacks this season who have made 6 big-time throws in one game. Those 2 quarterbacks are Buffalo Bills quarterback Josh Allen last week and Carolina Panthers quarterback PJ Walker on Sunday. The difference here is that Josh Allen also had a turnover-worthy play. PJ Walker did not. The Carolina Panthers beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Everyone assumed that the Carolina Panthers were tanking after they traded away Christian McCaffrey. PJ Walker said, nope, we're going to win this game. I'm going to play the game of my life better than he's ever played in the NFL, probably better than he's ever played in the XFL as well. I think this talks to a lot of the issues that are there on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think that they miss Ndamukong Suh. I think they miss Jason Pierre-Paul. I think they miss a lot of players on defense. Tom Brady doesn't look like the same quarterback this season on offense. They've had a lot of injuries, but still, big shout out to PJ Walker for how he was able to perform on Sunday against the Buccaneers.
Huge shout out. I think this is a great moment to point out that, look, getting kind of freaked out about single game grades. Guys, the worst player in the NFL could be the best player in the NFL for a game, maybe even for a month. Yes. They lost Christian McCaffrey, and their backup running backs against a good Tampa Bay Buccaneers run defense averaged 10 yards a carry until the fourth quarter when it was garbage time. And I can't believe I'm saying garbage time with respect to Carolina's offense against Tampa Bay's defense, but that's what it was. So, yeah, they were phenomenal. Bradley Bozeman, their backup center, who was a free agent signing, also had a 93 grade. He had 11 positively graded run blocking snaps out of 26 total run block stats, which I know is kind of hard to put in context, but is a ridiculous amount of positively graded snaps. So, yeah, they showed up. They played really hard, and you cannot put P.J. Walker on the bench after that performance.
No, definitely not. I mean, it seems like Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold both getting healthy. Those guys had the quarterback competition this offseason, and maybe PJ Walker should have won it. But I don't know. We'll temper our enthusiasm for PJ Walker until he shows in another game. But Brad, who was your up this weekend?
Yeah, so my up was Dallas Cowboys rookie second-round edge defender Sam Williams. It's crazy that I'm talking about another edge defender for these Dallas Cowboys, but he had 8 pass rush snaps and had 2 pressures and 2 sacks on those 8 pass rush snaps. And now, going back the last 3 weeks, as he's slowly played more and more football, he has 6 quarterback pressures on 29 pass rush snaps, which is an over 20% clip. I mean, which is a very good number. Again, without knowing context, that would be top 10 in the NFL over the full season. Obviously, with more volume, you expect that to come down. But the fact that they have another player, a 5th edge rusher that is a really, really good player on a small sample size is just truly insane. And it changes the complexion of their entire roster. It makes, letting Randy Gregory walk may have kind of been in some ways a blessing in disguise if Sam Williams can step in and be that next guy on the edge. Yeah. Maybe they trade Terrell Basham at the trade deadline. His name was floated by Jeremy Fowler of ESPN. I actually put him in an article before the season began because Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler were already there, and now Sam Williams is also in the fold. So he's my one up because he is just, if you watch him too, he looks like a guy that has that juice. He's not quite Micah Parsons. They also kind of look weirdly alike, but a really good young player that's getting better every week you watch him.
Yeah, better pass rush grade than Micah Parsons last weekend or this weekend. That's difficult to do. In the comments here, if you're listening on YouTube and watching on YouTube, feel free to throw in your one up and one down for this weekend. Special shout out to Seahawks safety Ryan Neal, as I was about to say. He had a 92.4 coverage grade on Sunday. He led up 4 catches on 6 targets for just 13 yards, and he had an interception and 3 forced incompletions against Los Angeles Chargers. Basically, if you threw the ball near Ryan Neal this weekend, he was either going to intercept it or break it up or let up like a 2-yard catch. So a big shout out to Ryan Neal. My down this week, Steelers cornerback Levi Wallace. He dropped 2 interceptions for Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa on Sunday night. Definitely a couple of back-breaking plays for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But even other than that, he had 5 catches on 8 targets for 86 yards. So even when he wasn't dropping interceptions, he was letting up catches and not playing great there against the Miami Dolphins. Who was your down for this weekend?
Tua Tagovailoa truly could have thrown 4 interceptions in that game. It was remarkably through 0. Mine is Trevor Lawrence, and we've had this conversation back and forth a bunch, but this past week he graded better than Zach Wilson, Brett Rippon, Taylor Heineke, and that is the full list of guys he graded better than. He just continues to miss throws. He does make those throws where you say, oh, wow, this is why he was the number 1 overall pick and touted as a generational prospect, and then it goes under the radar and no one really seems to talk about it, but guys are getting open, and it's intermediate throwing, and he's just inaccurate and just not delivering good footballs. And it keeps happening week after week. Doug Peterson, look, it's a pretty good offensive line. Cam Robinson did get hurt for a stretch in this game, but they have depth at tackle. The receivers, I'm not saying they're great, but they're good enough. They're solid. He just continues to be kind of erratic at times, and they frankly should have won that football game against the New York Giants. So I just, I still want to see it from him. Again, I'm not writing the book, I'm not writing him off or anything, but it's just, it throws that a guy that's touted as the next Andrew Luck, the next Peyton Manning should probably be making now, 20 games into his career.
Yeah, he's been inconsistent. He had that 2-week stretch where he looked like he was really going to ascend into, one of the top tier quarterbacks in the NFL. And now he's gone back downhill again. Another one of my downs, and I'm not going to give a full write-up on this or a full explanation on this. Just Justin Herbert didn't play very well against the Seattle Seahawks defense that has struggled at times this season. I'm not sure if he's still kind of feeling the effects of that fractured rib cartilage that he suffered last month. I know that those things can kind of linger a little bit, but Justin Herbert just hasn't taken that next step forward, I feel like, this season that a lot of people expected him to. And yesterday's game against the Seahawks was his worst probably this season, and it was his lowest graded game since week 12 of the 2021 season. So we'll see how much he can bounce back here after, as you mentioned, they're well-timed bye. All right, let's get back more into Monday Night Football between the Chicago Bears and the New England Patriots. I will be there. I live about 7 miles as the crow flies from Gillette Stadium. So easy commute for me tonight to get there to Gillette Stadium. But before we get into best bets, I was just kind of looking at daily fantasy for this game. And as we've mentioned, we don't know exactly what is going to happen at quarterback for the New England Patriots tonight. Could be Mac Jones starting, could still be Bailey Zappi. There was some indecision on the Patriots' part about whether they wanted to put Mac Jones out there if he was not going to be 100%, and it does not seem like he is 100%. So as I mentioned, we'll see what actually happens there. But if you're playing daily fantasy, Patriots have two very solid running backs in Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Harris. Damian Harris, I would say, is expected to play in this game. He was a full participant in practice this week. And the Bears this season rank 26th in EPA per run against. They also rank below average in both yards before carry and yards after carry per attempt, which means that their defensive line is getting pushed around and their tackling has been a little bit subpar. So whether you're, putting Ramondre Stevenson or Damian Harris in that captain spot, I would support either one of those decisions. As far as, other players to play in daily fantasy, not loving any of the quarterbacks really involved in this one, but Jacoby Myers, I think, could wind up having a big game because of some of the injuries the Patriots have at wide receiver. And the Patriots' run defense also has been a little bit suspect at times. And you could probably speak to more how the Bears have split up their carries at running back. But just if they're going to be splitting carries, and I think that both running backs are pretty solid, Khalil Herbert is at least the better value if you're going to put one of those guys in a daily fantasy lineup.
That is kind of the tricky part, is figuring out who they're going to go with. Head coach Matt Eberflus said earlier in the week that whoever has the hot hand will continue to kind of get more and more of the work, which of course is a tough thing to hear from a fantasy football standpoint. But yeah, the Patriots right now are 28th in run defense on the interior for us this season. They have done well with Dietrich Wise and Matthew Jett on the outside, but if you can run up the middle on them, Bears run a lot of inside zone, and so that is a potentially susceptible area for them. But I'm with you. I would captain one of the Patriots running backs. Also, you get game script in your favor most likely if they're up early and just want to bleed out the clock because they're not concerned about Chicago scoring a bunch. And then if you do want to look at receivers, I agree with you on Jacoby Myers because I think Jalen Johnson will get a lot of Devontae Parker. I frankly think that he is better. That's a mismatch in Jalen Johnson's favor. And he will probably shut him down to a degree. So Jacoby Myers, maybe a little bit of Tyquan Thornton. I'm sure he's relatively cheap. They have been targeting him a bunch in the red zone. I wrote that last week. He already has more red zone targets than Kendrick Bourne, but obviously he's not playing tonight, but just kind of shows that they really like him a lot. They want him to get involved in high leverage areas of the football field. So that's kind of how I look from that side. And then, I wouldn't target any Bears receiver of any kind. It's probably Montgomery or Herbert. And like I said, you don't really know which guy is going to be toting the rock more than the other.
Yeah, I set a lineup right before we came on, and my captain was Damian Harris just because that's a better value than Ramondre Stevenson. Cheaper, you can add some more talent on there as well. Not quite sure how they'll split up the carries with Damian Harris back since Stevenson has been so good. But yeah, Damian Harris in that captain spot. Then Patriots defense, I think that's a good play in this game. Khalil Herbert, Jacoby Myers, Ramondre Stevenson, and Tyquan Thornton. You can get all of those guys in a DraftKings lineup. And yeah, I mean, Patriots defense, as we mentioned, hasn't been great against the run, but they've created a decent amount of turnovers, and they're going up against, Justin Fields, who obviously has struggled a little bit so far this season. We'll see how much he can get done with his legs against the Patriots, but I think that they will be kind of daring him to pass, and that could potentially lead to some turnovers. As far as best bets go in this game, actually, I just had a fun fact before we get to best bets. Did you know that between 1981 and 1995, the Patriots were not allowed to host Monday Night Football games?
I did not know that. Can you tell me why?
The town of Foxborough, I think it was, essentially said, no, you are not allowed to have night games at Gillette Stadium because fans would get so drunk at night and drank so much beer, so much liquor that there would be chaos and fights and just complete havoc at Foxborough Stadium. And it wasn't until after Robert Kraft bought the team in 1995 that they were allowed to have night games again. And obviously that's incredible at this point, since the Patriots have basically had 5 night games a year during this entire Tom Brady era. But I grew up in Seattle. I've got the Seahawks helmet behind me back there. And I would watch, Seahawks games. I would watch Monday Night Football with my dad. And the Patriots, when I was a kid, weren't really even that much on the periphery until Drew Bledsoe was drafted because he was a Washington guy. But I think a lot of that was just the fact that they weren't on Monday Night Football. And yeah, that's the fun fact for the show about why the Patriots were not allowed to host Monday Night Football for 15 years during the 80s. But as we mentioned off the top, Patriots are favored by 8 points in this game, and the point total is 40. So how are you feeling on this one?
Yeah, well, real quick, now that we're doing New England area drinking rules, is that why they can't have happy hour as well? Because everyone just gets too drunk at happy hour, and it's a risk to society? Because I remember visiting friends and hearing that little factoid and wondering what the case was there.
Probably. I mean, that's probably it. Yeah. It's a strange area.
Yeah. I mean, hey, Chicago, I don't think is the driest city in the world either. But back to the football game. After a little tangent there. I've talked all week. I love New England in this spot, but the spread has now actually moved to 8.5. It's actually gotten to 9 at some books as well. Like you said, still without even knowing who the quarterback is, which is pretty funny. I like teasing it if you can still get it at 8.5 and tease it down to 2.5. That gets you through the key numbers of 7 and 3, which is what teasing is all about. And obviously, there's no games left this week, but next week, I think there's a lot of interesting teaser legs. The Buccaneers, as bad as they've been, are home underdogs against the Baltimore Ravens. You could tease them up to plus 7.5 and get Tom Brady with over a touchdown at home with, kind of his season on the line. I like New Orleans plus 1.5 or plus 2 next week as well. I think it's a bit of an overreaction to both the Saints-Cardinals game and the Raiders-Texans game. So I like those two spots. And then we already discussed, Justin Fields under half a touchdown pass has been a profitable bet, this entire season. And all those angles. Ramondre Stevenson over rushing yards. I don't even know what it is, but I'm sure it's a good bet. That's how I'm playing tonight. For sure.
I know you're not supposed to go this way, but I kind of like the Patriots, but I also kind of like the under in this game. So if I had to pick between those, I'd probably pick the under just because I really don't think that the Bears are going to get, much production at all in this matchup. I don't think that we're going to see a very efficient Bears offense, but I also don't know how many points the Patriots are going to score, especially given the quarterback situation. And if it is Mac Jones out there, still, as I mentioned, not 100%. I think that the running backs can do some damage against the Bears, but just not quite sure how many points they would have to put up to reach that 40 spot, given maybe what I'm expecting out of that Bears team. Obviously, some crazy things can happen with defensive scores and everything like that. But yeah, I'm kind of feeling the under in this matchup. Anything else that you want to add before I head off to Gillette Stadium?
Oh, enjoy the game. We'll talk later. And yeah, folks, keep an eye out. Trade deadline is a week away now, so we will have a ton of content covering every angle of that coming forward. And, we've heard some things. I think there will be more activity before next Tuesday's deadline, so keep an eye out for content from the both of us.
Definitely. And one more note on that. Elijah Moore, I believe that Robert Saleh, the Jets head coach, announced that he was back in the building, expected to play next week against New England Patriots. So it could only wind up being a 1-game absence since the Jets have said that they do not want to trade Elijah Moore. All right. Well, that will do it for today's edition of PFF Wire. Make sure to subscribe to PFF Wire on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Download the PFF app. Subscribe to PFF Plus, only $79.99 a year. Follow Brad on Twitter at PFF_Brad. Throw me a follow at Doug Kyed, and we will be back with you guys again on Wednesday, same time, same place. And we are about to be out. All right. We'll talk to you guys again on Wednesday.